Hi, welcome to Russ's Kitchen. Here's a recipe for a French classic quiche Lorraine. I'm going to be making two slightly different versions. First version is the absolute classic using bacon, onion and cheese. And I'm also then going to be making a vegetarian version using feta cheese and tomato. So let's have a look to see what's going to go into this wonderful homemade quiche. Over here we've got for our pastry plain flour, butter. I'm also going to be adding 1 egg yolk, and to mix it all together some ice cold water. Now for the filling I'm using eggs, feta cheese, I've got cheddar cheese, some cherry tomatoes, bacon, double cream. I'm also going to be adding some milk and a little bit of onion. Let's start by making our short crust pastry. I'm going to blitz the butter and the flour together so that it forms a texture of like very fine breadcrumbs. I'm going to be using this food processor. You can do it by hand in a bowl if you prefer. So let's do this first. And there it is. Nice, fine, almost like a breadcrumb type texture. So into this we've got our egg yolk, and let's add our ice cold water. Again, it's very important that we use ice cold water. This is going to shock that butter back again. It's going to stop it from splitting. I'm going to take about 3 to 4 tablespoons of water. Let's start off with just 3, and we're going to blitz that together until it starts to come together and form a dough. Just a little bit more water to help that come together. And that's started to come together to form our short crust pastry. We're going to now take that out onto a lightly floured surface and just give it a little bit of a knead. We don't want to knead this too much. It's short crust, so it just takes a little bit of care. That's our pastry all made. How easy is that? I'm now going to just pop that into this little glass dish. That's going to go into the fridge and it's going to chill down. We want to make sure that's really cold before we actually start making the quiche. So while the pastry is chilling in the fridge, we're going to get on and start making our filling. And the first thing we're going to do is chop up our bacon nice and finely and chop up the onion again nice and finely. Everything's now finely chopped. We're going to start with our onion. We've got a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of this frying pan, and we're going to sweat down the onion until it's really nice and soft. So the onion is now softened down. I'm going to transfer that onto a plate with a little bit of kitchen oil, just so that it absorbs any of the oil that we've been using. We don't want it to be too oily when it goes into the quiche mixture. Now we want to try and get all the onion out of the pan, because what's going to happen now is we're going to turn the heat right up, and we're going to cook our bacon. So if there's any little bits of onion that is still left in, they will probably start to burn, so we don't really want that. That's looking okay. Back onto the heat, and I'm turning it right up, and then in we go with our chopped up bacon. So there's our bacon, just cooked through enough, but not overdone. I'm going to turn off the heat and going to transfer this to the same plate that we've got our fried onions. And again, same reason, onto the kitchen paper so that it absorbs any of that fat that's in there. So it's time to roll out our pastry. It's been in the fridge now for about half an hour, nice and chilled. We're going to put a little bit of flour onto our work surface. We don't really need too much. Take our pastry and we're going to cut this more or less into half. And then half is going to go back into the fridge so it stays nice and cold. So let's get our pastry into a rough ball. I'm going to take a rolling pin, dust that with a little bit of flour, and then we're going to roll this out. It is best if you can keep working it as fairly quickly so that the pastry doesn't start to warm up. That is really going to help it. So we turn and roll. Just keep turning the pastry, rolling it out. Hopefully it'll stay in a rough circle. And we're going to keep rolling this out until it becomes quite thin. We're looking at maybe 3 mil thickness. If it starts to stick like it just did there, not a problem. A little bit more flour. And that feels pretty much the kind of thickness that I'm looking for. So the next thing we want to do is take our dishes that we're going to actually make the quiche in, take our pastry and very gently lay it over the top of the dish. Try and do it as equally as you can, and then with your fingers just tuck it down so that it goes right into the base. What you can do, just tear off a little bit of the pastry that you're not going to need, make a ball, and that is a nice way of being able to firm the pastry down into the dish. So that's looking pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is just remove this excess pastry. Now there's quite a nice sharp edge to these dishes, so I can literally break it off. And you can be as careful with this as you like. You can always trim the pastry to make it look a bit neater once this is actually baked. there we have, pastry is trimmed. Again, I'm not getting too worried about it being neat. We can always trim that off. It's going to be a lot easier to do that once it's baked. Now the next thing we need to do is prick the base of our pastry. If we don't do this, once it goes into the oven, all that's going to happen is that's just going to puff up. It's going to be useless. So there we go with that. Now the next thing is to take some greaseproof paper or baking parchment, big enough to sit inside the case, and we just screw it up. Reason for that is it's now going to sit much easier inside our pastry case. So we're going to put that in, gently ease it down into the corners, and we're going to fill that, or half fill it, with some baking beans. And make sure that they go right into all the edges. So that is now ready to be blind baked in the oven, and we're going to cook that initially for about 10 to 12 minutes on 190 degrees. After that, we take the beans out and then we bake them for a further 10 minutes, just so that they start to get nice and crisp. Our cases are now cooked and they've come out of the oven. We're now going to make the filling, and we're going to start with our 4 eggs. Into that we're going to take our double cream, 150 ml. Going to use the same container to measure out 150 ml of milk. Into that, just a little twist of black pepper, and then I'm going to take a fork and I'm going to start gently mixing all this together, gently breaking up the egg yolks. You don't have to mix this too finely. So now it's time to make the first quiche, which is the classic quiche Lorraine. So I'm going to take our mixture, pour it into the case, take our onion and our bacon, make sure that's mixed in. And then cheddar cheese. and then we can just top that up with just a little bit more of the liquid. Gorgeous. Now let's do the next one, which is going to be our vegetarian version using feta cheese and cherry tomatoes. Now what I've done is I've cut up the feta into small little cubes. So again, take our mixture, take our feta and just sprinkle that in. How much you put in is entirely up to you. Now, half these cherry tomatoes, and I'm just going to pop those in. And I don't think I need to top this up anymore because it's actually really quite close to the top. So there you go. Classic quiche Lorraine, feta and tomato quiche. That's going to go back into the oven, 190 degrees, and it's going to take around 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes to cook. And there you go. Absolutely delicious homemade quiche. Classic quiche Lorraine, and my recipe for feta and tomato quiche. Beautiful.